Anyway, welcome. Victoria Dowd is our interview subject today, and she's also the new co-convener of the London meetups. And I want to welcome wonderful Victoria. She has two books. One has just come out not too long ago, Body on the Island, and then her debut novel, The Smart Woman's Guide to Murder, came out, and there's some really terrific news about this book. She just won a major award. It's the People's Choice Award. And do you happen to have it by any chance? There's a lovely picture.
I might just happen to have it on my desk. If it can fit in the Zoom, it's enormous.
I know, it's fabulous, and you don't want to sit on that. It's really beautiful.
It's a fantastic murder weapon. Look at that.
It is. You could kill someone with that easily. That is great. So that is a wonderful award. Yeah, because readers vote for that. So, I mean, this is truly a We Love You award, as opposed to something that's politically motivated and so forth. So this is a very loving award to receive. Anyway, congratulations, Victoria.
Thank you very much. It was lovely to receive it. I think they usually have a huge ceremony at the Stationers' Hall in London, and it's all, Frederick Forsyth gives it and all that. Fred's not been round though. No. He's not been round.
Still, you got the thing. You got the thing.
It was sent in the post. Maybe, another time.
So we're going to talk a little about your series. This is The Smart Women. This is a mother-daughter team whose last name is that, and who are very ill-matched ladies.
Yeah.
And it's basically just a wonderful series that is both comic and Agatha-like and gruesome and surprising. It's just full of treats to read.
Thank you very much.
So enjoyed it. And anyway, so I have many, many questions to ask you, but I'm going to start with asking you a little bit about yourself. You've now had two novels published, and you're working, I believe, on your third, right? The third.
That's right. Well, the third is in. It's kind of this weird sort of situation where the third is in second edit, and I'm halfway through the fourth. So
that's prolific. That is excellent. Yeah. Excellent news. And they are set in the present day, but they are very Agatha-like in lots of ways. We'll get into that in a minute. But I'd like to ask you, Victoria, your background, your personal background is unusual for a mystery writer, but really, I think, useful. You were a criminal barrister, right?
That's right. Yeah, I was for many, many years a criminal defense barrister. I did occasionally prosecute, but very rarely. I was on the London circuit, so appearing at the Old Bailey and that kind of thing, and for many, many years doing that, which is helping my fourth book, which is set in the Old Bailey and is a criminal case, although obviously my knowledge is slightly out of date now, and I've had to go back to some of my colleagues from the bar to ask, is this still happening, and how is the technology coming into the courtroom? I think they've had a bit of a shocker, obviously, over the recent situation, and they're trying to update really quickly, but we're still all wigs and gowns.
Yes, wigs and gowns. I remember earlier asking you, do you have one of those wigs?
I do. Hang on. It's in my maiden name, obviously. And this is the wig tin you have from Eden Ravenscroft. And inside, all barristers' wigs are utterly filthy. And I come from the era when, smoking was de rigueur for most barristers, and that's the inside that most people don't get to see. But there you go. And it smells, which thankfully you're not being subjected to. And there you go.
There it is. And people put it on like that just with their regular hair showing, right? Like
mostly I would go tied back. big glasses, and ladies, or gentlemen, I don't know, tend to have what they call the beaver's teeth. So you have it's a large collar that goes around here, and it has the two beaver's teeth here, but it's a large vest as well, and it all velcros down the back. So often I would just be wearing a normal shirt like this, or even a t-shirt or something like that, and you're kind of in costume, really, basically, because the gown has sort of, it's almost like American football padding in the top, just in case, And so with the wig, the glasses, the whole thing and everything, you're utterly unrecognizable when you come out of the courtroom. So I would walk past people I'd cross-examined, and they would never know who I was. I would be...
That's probably a good thing, isn't it? Actually.
Yeah, most of the time. Very much so.
And sort of protect you in a way.
Yeah, it is, and you know who everybody is the minute you walk into the courtroom, and who you
they have the name. Yeah, I suppose they wanted to track you, they could find your name, but still, that sounds like a sort of protective coloration. And yeah, oh, that's interesting. Now, okay, by contrast, what do you wear when you're sitting there writing?
Oh my goodness, it's mostly just, t-shirt, jogging bottoms. And also, I don't have it in the room with me at the moment, a massive back brace. So it pulls my shoulders back. I presume all writers have this terrible thing. We were talking earlier about the chairs that we all have. I've gone through a bound chairs that I really like at the moment. They cannot move from where they are. I have to have everything at a specific level, and the back, everything,
You've done ergonomics for your desk and so forth. Yeah, I think every pro that I know has done the ergonomics thing, or else it's excruciating after the amount of time it takes. Well, so let me get into your book a little bit here. So The Smart Women, where did this idea come from? For the smart women?
So I kind of, obviously I've always wanted to write whodunit books, but I wanted them to be a little bit more updated. And I also wanted them to have a much more human element. So often in, Agatha Christie or any other sort of, Campion style book, or Lord Peter Wimsey, there is this enormous shining beacon of somebody who you look towards, who you think they will solve it, this will all be okay. Whereas I wanted it to have a kind of family dynamic and involve the women who, they are very unlikely people to be attempting to solve a murder mystery, much less do they want to. They just find themselves in these situations where they have to survive, but they have to survive each other as well a large amount of the time, which is difficult of its own. So originally they're a book club, and this was magnificently inspired by the number of truly awful book clubs that I have been a member of. And you dot around various book clubs. You're lucky if it's just a kind of chat and a bit of talking about the book, and it's congenial. Some of them dissolve into the most toxic environment that you've ever experienced, and I was enormously inspired by that. The stories that I have been through, that you would make your toes curl. People who thought their houses were haunted, people who had huge problems with other people in the group, the emails that ping around between them, and the subterfuge that's happening in the background of, someone's had their house redecorated. Come round to mine and, we'll do this. Or they're having secret outside caterers come in. All this going on behind simply talking about a book, which actually nobody really talks about either. So I found that...
It's not really the point then, is it? It's not really the point. Yeah, that was a really delightful subtext to this the book club. You obviously, I know, because you said so, but also from your writing, are a huge fan of Agatha Christie. So, have you been first of all, how did you get interested in Agatha Christie as a girl? Like, what do you remember your entry books and what sort of the genesis of your interest in her?
Completely. We had a house full of old books and, books that were just, dusty on bookcases. And there was always the odd Agatha Christie in there. And I'd have a look and I was quite young when I started reading them, actually. I was about 8, I think. And I think that's probably a little too young to be reading about somebody who decides to murder everybody on an island. But then when you go to the library, and I was and still am a huge fan of libraries, what was really attractive to me were the authors where there was a big span of books. So you kind of thought, if I get into this, that's it. I don't have to make many decisions for a few months. I can check all these out. And I just feverishly read through them, and they don't really follow a pattern, but your brain kind of thinks they do, and you read one after another, and it becomes like a drug, and you just you're addicted to these particular books, kind of like with the Sherlock books. But I've read them again and again. Thankfully, with a terrible memory, it's brilliant because I can, reread old books, books that I've read a million times and think, I still can't remember who's done it.
Yeah, that's good. It's fresh again. So, do you have, of the Agatha, works, do you have a particular favorite amateur or real detective in among them?
Oh, I think it would have to be Poirot. Would be my favorite detective, which sounds awful because I love Miss Marple, but the Poirots were always, he's got some of the best stories out of them. Murder on the Orient Express, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. He really takes it with the groundbreaking.
So the construction of the mysteries is maybe a little more sophisticated in a way, or possibly inventive, do you think? Or?
I think it is, actually. I think it is. The Miss Marple ones I adore, and I do love the Tommy and Tuppence, all of that. But the Poirot ones, those are the ones where I think, she had the groundbreaking denouement, where you just think, who is it? Who is it? Oh my God, it's everyone. Gee, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Or it's the narrator, and you followed him all. He's the sidekick. He is the Dr. Watson, and it's him. And those books are just so special and so amazing that no one can emulate those. They're amazing. But obviously her standalone books are amazing as well. So you have, and then there were none, which. I don't think anybody comes close to with the denouement there, where you literally as a teenage girl when you're reading something like that, it's the jaw-dropping shout out loud moment of, oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had that with any other book.
Really?
And then there were none, was the only one, and Rebecca, where he gets to the moment and you just think everything has changed.
So is that your goal? Is that your goal as a writer, to create a moment like that then?
Yeah. And I'm constantly trying to do that. I love the sort of, I love John Dixon Carr and the locked room mystery. And I want to create the ultimate locked room mystery. But I think everybody's trying to do that. I want to create something where no one would ever guess that it's that person who is, and the puzzle is the thing that I'm constantly trying to work out, something that hasn't been done, which is almost impossible, I think.
Yeah. Lots have been. Well, it's interesting that you what you've been describing is the who did it mystery, but there's also the why or the how.
Yeah.
Or as in terms of where the mystery lies. Like sometimes, like in the Columbo TV series, it's the how done it. Then how are we going to prove who did it? Because we know who did it, like right at the beginning. And then it's like, will we ever get to get this person? And we don't know how they did it or whatever. So I mean, there's different channels of mystery that you can choose as a writer.
I love that. I love the how done it part. I think I probably like the how done it more than the who done it. And I spent a huge amount of time on the third book trying to create this, how did this work? And it's a lot to do with the mechanism of how it works in a castle. And I actually, I construct them in my home, obviously on a miniature scale. And I love all that. It's almost like...
Wait. Go back to that. You construct in your home what?
I construct the way in which things happen quite a lot. So,
what do you mean you construct it? You mean in your head, right?
No, actually physically.
So, well, obviously,
but they work.
Okay. So you obviously can't tell us because that would spoil one of the books to come. But you now do you work on a big board with the threads or whatever, or how do you because I believe now from having done 4 mysteries that the construction of a really good mystery / thriller is really difficult compared to a regular novel.
Yeah.
And so it's more complicated, and what is revealed when, at what time, by whom, what is known by whom at a given time.
Yeah.
These are like different they're like different patterns that go through your book, and they have to be offset in a certain way. So how do you physically work to plot your novels?
Okay, so I don't know if my little camera is going to let me do this. I have, I'm not very good at this sort of thing. You're going to see all the mess now. But I have down here, let's see if I can do it. Hang on. This is the Lego village.
Oh, wow.
And these are the smart women. And this is pillaged so we've got the castle, we've got everything there, and that's my bin. You probably don't want to see my bin, but because I was losing where people were all the time, and I would think, well, no, hang on, the cleaner was over here. Were they? I don't know. So actually physically seeing where people were was quite good and quite fun. And then I have I'm going to show you this is for my 4th book, so I don't show too much, but these are my murder boards that sit above. Mm-hmm. And it's all sort of red string and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's very heavily plotted, which it kind of has to be, doesn't it, with those kind of books? Mm-hmm. You can't say, that I think with my first book, The Smart Woman's Guide to Murder, I had an editor who was very meticulous, and she put at one point, I'd done this whole thing. I really wanted them to be, they're snowed in at a mansion. And it's the old sort of, I tried to take the tropes of Agatha Christie, it's the old crumbling mansion. They're snowed in, they're isolated, there's no Wi-Fi, la, la, la. And they're looking out, and I wanted it to be almost like a stage where the snow is out there as the audience and looking back through the big windows, and they are in a play and they are being heavily placed like the mousetrap, basically. And those fantastic trips to amazing theatres that we all used to do. And
we'll do it again.
And the editor said, halfway through, she went, no, this can't work at all, because on page 10, you closed the curtains. And I was just like, how can this have happened? That I've done all of this, and it's all set up like an immaculate stage set, And at one tiny point, I closed the curtains.
Well, unfortunately, that's a very easy fix.
Yeah, it was an easy fix, but it could easily have slipped through the net.
Right.
People are, I think if you write those kind of almost sort of Jonathan Creek style books where they work on the magic trick of everything, they work on, there's sleight of hand going on quite a lot. You have to get every tiny thing right.
Yes, somebody will. I had a fight scene in my very first novel behind the Chat Noir in Paris, and at one point, Watson has a gun, but it's knocked out of his hands and skitters off into the darkness. And then later on, he has it, and some readers said, "When did he get it back?"
Yeah. You have that whole thing.
Yeah, there will be somebody who says that, so you have to show him getting it back. It's like you must show that or tell it.
But I had a lot of fun with book 3 that hopefully will be coming out soon, where it's a castle, and I really wanted to use, because there are so many ways to kill people in castles.
Yes.
So, there's an Iron Maiden, there's a ducking stool, there's cannons everywhere. And there's murder holes in the place, they're actually called murder holes. And it's just it's a forest of ideas for, bumping people off, and tunnels everywhere, priest holes.
Yes.
I absolutely loved researching that book, but you have to get it right,
because somebody will call you on it.
Yeah, every time, and yes, also there were points when some of the editors were saying, well, you need to really explain what an Iron Maiden is. And I thought, do I? Do people not kind of know exactly what an Iron Maiden is? So I have to go into the whole mechanism of it, how it opens, how it closes, all that kind of thing.
What did you decide for the Iron Maiden? Did you describe what it was?
Yeah, I went into the full description of the Iron Maiden, which I actually quite enjoyed doing, to be honest.
Right.
But I think I've got a new locked room, but that is a huge claim, and I would not make that anywhere else but here. Because I'm a huge fan of John Dixon Carr, and I know that there are a lot of people out there who are huge fans of the locked room, and there are even books with the whole chapter that is, like The Hollow Man, where he does his whole chapter on these are the only locked room solutions. But I do think there is space for new ones. I particularly liked in the Sherlock series where they did the car, and not to spoil it for too many people, but the young man who's in the car, and how is he there? He just wasn't there. And then his skeleton is there. And you think, how is this? I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And it is a riff on ones where people are walled up or they're in the room. But I thought it was a brilliant riff, that one.
Yes, it is. It's interesting because the idea of the locked room kind of histories, it's related very much to the Holmes deductions that he makes that you can't make, or that the minute he makes them, you go, oh, of course.
Yeah.
But you don't make them before he does, and
no.
And that's kind of the tricky. Yeah. That's the little tricky stuff, and to me, that's the most time consuming as a writer. Do you find?
Completely, and the whole fact that it has to be fair play. So it has to be there. I have to put all of the steps that are there for you to get it, and then you go back. So for somebody who would read.
Yeah, or at least enough that you should be able to get, that you haven't cheated, it's not a rabbit out of the hat. Because nobody likes that.
But, no, and I completely, I go through it again and again and again thinking, have I made it too obvious? Have I made it too hidden? And
yes,
so it's there.
And at the right place in the story also.
Yeah, but with the one I'm writing at the moment, I'm making it incredibly obvious. It's there. I wanted to, so I've tried to take each version of a golden age detective novel. So you have the locked room, you have the crossover mystery, you have the multiple murderers, etc., etc. I'm trying to take each version of that and update it a little and see if it works in a modern day and see if I can do that. But it's pretty tricky.
It is. Now, you have a remarkable facility for dialogue, and of course, you're writing present day with very contemporary characters and very irascible characters with tons of conflict. I mean, writing advice always says, be sure to include lots of conflict. Well, you have lots. Lots of conflict. So, can you talk a little bit about how you go about creating these very interesting, and they feel very modern. How do you develop your characters for these books? Let's start with mother and daughter, okay? Because they crack me up.
So I come from a long line of very, very strong, irascible Yorkshire women who, I had one particular review when I first started and the books first came out and I was reading the reviews and it said, no. And it said, nobody's likable in this book. And I was absolutely broadsided by that. I just thought, I didn't write them to be likable. I wrote them to be possible murder suspects, people who you could imagine. Every single person in the book had to be someone you would imagine might take a human life. And I've met people like that in my previous profession, but not in real life, I hasten to add. How can you possibly have people in a book who you think are a suspect in a murder case who's a likable person? Obviously, people have likable characteristics. But if you believe that someone's taken a human life and you're being led down that avenue, they're capable of doing pretty much anything, really, I would have thought. But I also wanted to just escape from that concept of characters have to be likable. I don't need people to like the characters. And I've come to realize I don't need people to like the author either. And these are the things I write and these are the people I write. And they're very based in a lot of what I think comes out of Golden Age detection novels, where there are people there's a very thin veneer. They are the vicar, they're the local busybody, they're, your next door neighbor. And it's a really thin veneer in real life of, I'm being nice to you, but I could definitely kill you at any given point.
Yes, I like that. It's interesting because when you create a slew of unlikable characters, and I'm thinking about the group that the book club, and they're all like really annoying women, really annoying in various ways. But you're sort of telling them through Ursula's point of view, and so I find that Ursula is likable by default because she's not as bad as them. What I mean? So she says and does very annoying things herself, but but they're more annoying and they're more weird and unpleasant. And so I think it's by association or by comparison you like her.
Sort of, but also there is that point of she is the person telling you to like her.
Yes.
So all the way through, she's saying this. She presents an image of the other people constantly,
right?
And you're presented with her mother, who, she's being very obstreperous, but actually, you then realise Ursula is a 25-year-old woman who's acting slightly like a teenage girl a lot of the time, and lives with her mother. That's never gone into, and there's a lot that I don't go behind the curtain of, and so far, the initial impression people have is, oh my God, I hate all these characters. But there are now increasingly people who are saying, I really want to know these people more. I want to understand what makes them tick and why are they like this with each other. And there is a very, very small amount of tenderness that occurs at very, very huge periods of stress for both of them. And there's a lot I kind of refer to. So obviously in the second book, the supernatural element is introduced, and you start to see why they are who they are and what has made them who they are, and the fact that ultimately they would fight to the death for each other, and there's no one who can interrupt their relationship. It's so close that they feel they can say and do anything to one another, and it's almost toxic, but in a way you realize that they're so close and they're bonded by something that has happened that is horrific to them.
Yes, I got that, but it's interesting that you say almost toxic, and I think readers probably will respond to that based on their own individual experiences and so forth. But and it is surprising the arc that you develop actually with these characters. It's subtle, and I think that's one of the really interesting things about it. It's. You once called Ursula an unreliable narrator, I think, in some interview I saw with you. So can you talk a little bit about what is an unreliable narrator, and what is the I guess maybe the structural function of an unreliable narrator in a mystery story?
So I suspect all narrators are unreliable. So I'm unreliable. If I'd taken it on board and it was just she, then I think I would have made it unreliable, because everybody is unreliable. And at the moment I'm working on the sort of Rashomon stories where there's that concept of everybody sees the same event, but each person sees it in a different way. And that was something I really learned as being a barrister, that it's a huge inroad into taking people down, that everyone's seen something differently. No two people will watch the same event in the same way. It is impossible for them to do that. Mm-hmm. And those tiny little friction points where they disagree, they don't actually disagree, but they contradict one another slightly, so nothing quite fits together. And I love that juxtaposition where you have just one person will say just a tiny little thing that's minutely different, but it makes a huge difference to it. So I wanted to take an unreliable narrator and present to the reader somebody they knew was not telling them the absolute truth, because there is no absolute truth. When you see...
There's no whole truth from a single person, because... Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So I think when you see an event, you think you've seen the truth of that event and you relay those contents. And I wanted Ursula to do that, and all the other women in the book. But I wanted it to be very obvious to the reader that she cannot be 100% correct. No one's 100% correct. So there had to be those tiny cracks and the fissures that open up. And that's where I find the interesting point of any book, where something is slightly off kilter and you think, has she really seen that? So for instance, with Ursula, you know that she's seeing the ghost of her dead dad. Well, obviously she can't see that. She kind of knows that herself.
Yes.
And it's conjured at moments of extreme pressure and stress. She smells his tobacco smoke. She can't smell that, but she is smelling tobacco smoke because other people are relating that as well. She hears piano music. She can't be hearing that, but is it in her head? Because you're hearing the book inside her head. but also
Yes.
you're standing back a little bit and saying, this can't be entirely true. And I don't think anybody's recollection of any event is entirely true.
Right, exactly. Yes. Well, that is definitely that's definitely a challenge, I think, for constructing, a first-person narration mystery, or something that is told with an extremely strong point of view of some narrator, because some of it is more. Sometimes the stories are told more impersonally, and then you have a different set of problems, actually. So let me ask you this: I'm going to talk for a minute about it. First of all, I wanted to ask everybody in the audience to please put any questions you have for Victoria in the chat, and we'll get to that hopefully. So please put some in. I also wanted to ask you, Victoria, so every novelist that I know has what I call their in the drawer novel, the one they wrote before and whatever they did with it, but it's in a drawer now and it didn't escape into the real world. Most everyone I know has that. I certainly do. And it's like maybe our practice novel. So tell me about your experience before getting published. What were you doing as a writer and as a novelist then, and then what happened to put you over that next step?
I think I've got more than one in a drawer. I've got many in drawers. I love writing historical fiction, completely not crime. And I did write one called The Painter of Siena, about an artist in Mussolini's Italy, and how he had to work for the propaganda machine there, and how he had a muse. We went to Italy and explored all this. And I then wrote another historical fiction novel about Savonarola, who I'm fascinated by. I'm halfway through that novel and I desperately want to finish it. And because he is portrayed by the Medicis as being possibly the ugliest man on earth, I wanted it to be that was propaganda, and that he was quite a beautiful man and there is talk of the fact that he had somebody who loved him very much, who was a very beautiful woman, and then she just disappears before, obviously, the bonfire of the vanities and all that. So I wanted to explore that. So that's a half-written novel as well. I then have one called Interviews with Mistress Turpin, which is about the lady who Dick Turpin left his wedding ring to, and where is she and what was she doing. And that was another novel that sits in the bottom of a drawer somewhere. So one day they'll all escape and come running out, hopefully.
Well, so what did you finished, obviously, then the Smart Woman's Guide to Murder, and then what was your path to getting published?
Oh, it was so complicated and arduous. So the parts it was originally called the Smart Woman's Instruction Manual to Murder, and it was much more of an instruction manual that you might get from IKEA or something like that, And so there were instructions for how to escape a murder situation, how to avoid a murder situation, how to solve a murder situation. It was very meta. People kind of liked it, and I got the sort of 20 odd agents wanting the full manuscript and then saying, we don't really know what to do with this is unusual and strange, and we think we're going to have to cut down the meta stuff. So I had a lot more of Ursula actually speaking to you, the reader, which they thought was too knowing. And then I was involved with the publisher, who sadly collapsed and went bust, and it went on and on and on, and it just became this sort of thing where it's never going to happen. And I just got into the rhythm of enjoying writing for writing's sake, and I did a lot of short stories during that period, and I write a lot of Gothic fiction, which is not crime, much more supernatural, scary ghost stories, etc., and put them out to various magazines, journals, etc., that started to pick them up. I started to get a bit of traction with those. I did start a website that I, kept track of all this, and then people started going there. And then I won the Gothic Fiction Prize for a short story that was based on an actual historical event. And that kind of kicked off.
What was this prize? Can you tell me about this prize?
So this was a prize for a short story, the Gothic Fiction Prize for short fiction in 2019. And it was just before I got a publishing deal. And being able to put that I'd won a prize for something in the, the submission letter, I think gave it a little bit of extra oomph. And it kind of also gave me the feeling that I was a writer and people were taking me seriously a little bit more. And the brief was very much that it had to be relevant to the local area where they were taking the submissions from. So it was Dartmoor, and I spent a lot of time on Dartmoor. I love Dartmoor. And there's this fantastic story of a particular lady who had 4 husbands and is rumored to have murdered all of them, which the truth is very different. She was, routinely abused and used by these terrible men. But yeah, she had 4 husbands who died before her, and she is said to ride out in a carriage made of their bones with one of their skulls on each corner. And it is also, you probably know the story, Bonnie, anyway. She rides out with the wished hounds, and she has a black hound with red eyes who rides in her carriage. And it inspired Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to have the Hound of the Baskervilles. So yeah, that was really the start of everything, I think, getting that particular prize. And I think more as a sort of psychological thing for me as well, thinking I'm not just sitting around writing stories that nobody else reads. This is something that somebody else has liked and appreciated.
That makes so much sense, Victoria. We've got a couple of comments and questions from the group here. Sam says historical fiction sounds fascinating. Lexi says pipe cleaners and plasticine for your model. She wants to know. Was that very good? And then
Lego only here.
Nikki likes your comments about unreliable narrators. And also, let's see. Okay, Sarah wants to know, well, that's a bigger question, but let me ask this one first from Sarah. What is stopping these drawer novels from coming out? What made you publish crime over historical fiction? Well, I think that's because that's what was sold. That's the thing that sold, right?
It is, yeah.
But Nikki thinks you need to finish the Dick Turpin one.
It's finished. It's finished. I mean, I may have to go back. When you get into the publishing world and you discover, the doors open, and I was saying last night on a talk I was on, it's kind of like getting the golden ticket, but Willy Wonka's factory doors open, and it's also strange and weird inside and not anything like you imagined. It's wonderful. It's amazing. But it absolutely takes your breath away. And it's crazy. It's utterly crazy. So I think, the way I got the Dick Turpin novel, I loved it. And I very much I was influenced by Fingersmith quite a lot, the Sarah Waters book, where you have 2 women who you're not sure how these 2 cogs fit together and how it's working. And she's interviewing this particular woman who lived with Dick Turpin. And, he wasn't particularly the most fabulous man who we all imagine of crime fiction. He wasn't dashing. He definitely wasn't handsome. And he was a bit of a cad. But there was tell of a lady behind it all who was slightly more fabulous than him.
interesting.
But maybe.
Sometimes that's the case.
Yeah.
So Paul says he thinks the IKEA manual for murder is hilarious. He dreads to think what bits were left out. Now let's see. Okay, Sarah asks, how do you develop your novels from idea to murder board? So my question, I'm going to add to that question, are you a pantser or a plotter?
I'm magnificently a plotter. I think with a whodunit style book, it's got that Cluedo-esque nature. You have to plot every tiny little bit. So I write my books out in longhand before I type them up. So I have, kind of huge notebooks full of the actual chapters and where they fit.
You mean outlines of the chapters? You mean?
No, fully written.
I see.
So I fully write them out in longhand, but so much changes when it goes down onto the page on the computer, because it's another phase of the editing. And I kind of develop them through I have the idea of, I want to set it here. So the most recent one that I'm writing at the moment, I possibly set myself a more difficult task than I imagined. So I'm setting it at a crime writers convention. So I have to have a book for every single character in the book, because they are a crime writer. And it's been great fun to imagine, new levels and different people. And, you're hugely influenced by the people you know and what they do. And then all the people who are around that, like the psychologists, psychiatrists, the police, forensics people who come along. And it's a huge crime writers convention. And obviously the major guy is murdered. But we start at the trial of his wife for that. But yeah, I start off with an idea, often of setting, and I'm always looking for a new setting, primarily because I'm trying to isolate the people, which obviously, given the current climate, has been much easier. But
because we've all been isolated, exactly.
Yeah. But the setting is very key, and I have the characters already formed who are there, but why they would be there.
Sam wants to know if the convention one is book 4, and if so, when will it be out?
So book 3 is the next one out very soon, I hope, because it's going through edits at the moment, and that's The Locked Room. Book 4, I'm sort of 50,000 words in, loving it. It's one of those where you think, oh my God, I'm loving writing this too much. It can't be any good. That making up crime writers, making up members of Sleuths, which is a crime writing sort of syndicate of people, and the actual crime writer himself. And what I had to do, because he's a famous crime writer who is murdered, which doesn't give too much away because that happens in the first chapter, he has to have a major character who he's written many books about. And he's become famous in my own home. He's Sheridan Lefroy, and he is a barrister who solves crimes, who this guy has been writing about, who then he wants to kill off, and actually the writer gets killed off instead.
Okay, well, let me pause here for just a moment. I'm looking to see if there are any other questions we have. Let's see. I think we've asked most of the ones that people have asked. Sam's going to go off and order book 3 right now, and the crime writer book. People are really responding to your crime writer convention idea here.
I'm so worried about it, though, because at the moment I'm in that point where I'm writing at home and it's just fun and interesting. Yeah. But when things sort of explode out there, I'm hoping that my editor will say, you can't write this bit. You cannot put this person in because it's clearly obvious who this is. So I'm stepping on the borders of, what is acceptable. And I'm setting it on this brilliant setting that I'm utterly in love with, called No Man's Fort, which is one of the forts in the Solent that were set up in sort of Victorian times by Palmerston to protect England. And they're up for sale at the moment, if anybody's interested in buying them. They're £9 million for the lot. But I think you can get the one that's been turned into a hotel for a little bit less. And they are fantastic, totally circular forts in the Solent.
Oh, yeah.
The most magnificent place for a crime writers convention you could possibly imagine.
It is. Maybe there'll be one now.
Yeah,
well,
no,
anyway.
No, I doubt it after this.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Okay, so we have some amazing readers tonight, and we'll be pleased to know that I've stopped blathering on about Agatha Christie and murdering people, but there's more murders to come. So we have Sarah up first, and she is a debut author reading to us from The Islanders, which takes place in the world of reality TV on the hit show Loved Wrecked. It's been described as utterly compelling, an addictive thriller, and it's Love Island, basically, crossed with And Then There Were None. I have read this. It is utterly brilliant. We met in Waitrose Weekend magazine, I think, as we are fellow Islanders. So take it away, Sarah.
Okay, great. This is my first reading, so bear with me. Prologue, spyland.co.uk. Love wrecked to be axed from air after horrific events that took place on their show. Posted 1st of August. It was less than 1 week ago when all of us at Spyland, along with the entire nation, watched in horror at the gruesome scenes that unfolded live on our television screens. But despite the many eyes of the world, we still don't have answers for what the hell happened. This morning, the producers and management team of the hugely popular summertime show finally released a statement to the public after significant criticism for their silence over the past week. A spokesperson said, "I speak for everybody at the channel when I say we are devastated at the events that took place on the show. We're working closely with the police to understand who committed these horrific crimes, and will do everything in our power to ensure they face justice. It is with a heavy heart that we also announce that this season will be our last. We feel that it would be inappropriate for us to continue. We'd like to thank the public for their continued support of us, and all of our thoughts go to those affected. We at Spyland aren't overly convinced that that constitutes a sufficient response to what happened on the show. But we will reserve judgment until the perpetrator of these heinous crimes is caught. As always, stay tuned, and Spyland will bring you the latest news as we have it." Chapter 1, Kimberley, Sunday the 13th of July. I wipe a bead of sweat from my forehead and let out a moan of frustration. This month is on track with predictions to be the hottest since record began, and my tiny apartment is like an oven. Where the hell are my keys? I ask my bedroom, spinning around on my heels as I scan my surroundings. My head pounds as if the beat of last night's club music got trapped in my brain and is replaying over and over again. My need for pain relief soon overpowers the search for my keys, and I drag myself to the bathroom, my feet throbbing from the indignity of being forced into heels all night. I wince, remembering how I walked barefoot along my street, my high heels clasped in my hands. I dread to think how much dirt I brought into bed with me. Well, I think to myself, better than a stranger.
Oh, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, Sarah. That's got real kind of overtures of, that Lucy Foley kind of vibe and the Gone Girl. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's a really amazing book. I absolutely loved it. Thank you very much, Sarah. That was brilliant. Have you got plans for another book? Or
Yes, yeah, I've just finished book 2, which is due to my editor. I say just finished, very close to being finished, but it's due to my editor on Tuesday. So I'm off work tomorrow, and it's a bank holiday Monday. So I'll be in a little hole reading everything, and that should come out in February next year.
Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. We'll look forward to that. Thank you, Sarah. The Islanders. And it fulfills all of the things I love, Agatha Christie and reality TV. So,
and it's fun.
A perfect mix. Okay, so next up we have Penny. Batchelor we are tonight, aren't we, Penny? And she is an alumna of the Faber Academy of Online Writing and Novel Course. She's a freelance journalist, a former BBC producer, and her debut novel, My Perfect Sister, is utterly brilliant and was longlisted for The Guardian's Not the Booker Prize 2020. Her second book, Her New Best Friend, is out this August. She's going to read to us from My Perfect Sister, and it's absolutely brilliant. Take it away, Penny.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Yeah, I'm going to read right from the beginning. 2014. I stand in my childhood bedroom, though little remains of what it used to be. On the walls, where in my teenage years I had blue-tack Nirvana and Oasis posters, there's now pale blue wallpaper with a small white peony pattern. The older cider-stained taupe carpet has gone, replaced by a dark blue plush version. Instead of my vanity table placed against the side wall, there's a modern sewing machine on a stand, surrounded by neat stacked plastic boxes containing threads and fabric. Lots of flowers and pink. Everything has a place and is rigidly in it. The pencil marks on the door frame recording my height over the years have been emulsioned over. A white flat-pack wardrobe stands where my old wooden one used to be. Inside are empty hangers, the kind bought in a multi-pack, not plastic ones taken from high street shops on a Saturday afternoon shopping trip. No cast-off underwear destined for the laundry lounges on the floor. The childhood books I left behind are long gone, as is the small bookcase. Only the single bed remains as a remnant from what the room once was, to testify that I slept here. Even that, pushed up against the back wall instead of jutting out into the room, is covered in a patchwork quilt, no doubt sewn by my mother to show off her crafting skills to guests, if she ever has any. This is not my room anymore. It's the spare bedroom. In fact, it's as if I never was here, as if I didn't exist. On the contrary, it is Gemma who probably doesn't exist, but you wouldn't know it by looking in her room. I shut the spare room door behind me and push open the brown door with a pottery multicoloured Gemma sign still stuck on it. Behind that door is a lost world, a museum piece from a distant decade that should be covered Miss Havisham style in dust and cobwebs, but is as spick and span as if it were cleaned yesterday. And no doubt it was. Presents lie on the floor next to the bed where her shoe collection used to be, one for each birthday, and Christmas she has been gone. For goodness sake, does Mother think Gemma is going to come back from the dead and open them? Her pop posters still line the walls. Her lipsticks, mascara and eyeliner neatly sit on the dressing table below its mirror. Oh, I hate to think of the bacteria on them. And from the back of the dressing table chair hangs her mini rucksack, the black one she took out with her when meeting friends. Scruffy, the mangy, fluffy dog Mother said Gemma was given as a baby, guards her pillow. It's the same bed linen, purple with white swirls that she once slept in, but freshly washed and lawn and ironed. This is a sanitised teenage girl's bedroom, without the smell of perfume, freshly washed hair, sweaty cast-off clothes, or a cup of once-warm coffee, without breath, without life. I look at the pinboard resting on top of the desk. There are photos pinned there, photos I haven't seen for all those years I've been away. Photos from a real camera, the kind where you point, shoot, and don't know what the picture will turn out like until it comes back from the developers. In the middle of one faded rectangle, Gemma smiles at the camera, her dark brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. her eyes laughing at something the photographer must have said. She's in the park, I think. The evening light dances on her cheekbones, striped pink in that 80s fashion. Her cut-off T-shirt shows off a tanned midriff above a pair of pale blue ripped jeans. She's raising her arms in the air as if to say, "This is mine. This is all mine." The other photos show a mixture of permed girls and mulleted boys in a variety of fading situations. Someone's house, the park again, and one where they wear white school shirts with fat, short ties. She smiles out from the pictures, frozen at 16. As I turn to leave, I notice another picture at the bottom left-hand corner. One of my parents looking much younger, sitting on the step outside the front of this house. Mother is curled up on father's knee, and they are smiling for the camera. Their happy faces belie what I can remember from my childhood. I peer closer, inquisitively. I then remove the pin and pull the photo away from the board. The corner of another photo had covered part of the image. I take a sharp breath when I see which part hasn't been viewed by the world for 24 years. Here the colours are bright and stand out next to their muted neighbours. To the right of father, a real-life gap of about 20 centimetres away, there's a little girl with a ginger ponytail and a brown pinafore dress looking the other way. Not part of this cosy family scene. Me. Gemma must have taken it. I hear the front door close softly. Occasionally, I think if she weren't already dead, I'd want to kill Gemma myself.
That's fantastic, Penny. That's absolutely beautiful, really poignant, and really, really reminds me of so many bits of being a child and, being a teenager with a sister who obviously I adore, but, there's that aspect of seeing someone else's room sort of preserved an aspect. That's a really, really beautiful reading. Thank you so much, Penny. That was lovely.
Thank you for asking me.
I love that book as well. It's one of my favourite books of 2020, I have to say. It's fantastic. And moving on, Nikki, one of my other favourite books. Nikki Smith is the author of 2 psychological suspense thrillers, All in Her Head and Look What You Made Me Do, which have been receiving rave reviews. She'll be reading for us tonight from Look What You Made Me Do, which Charlotte Duckworth said is creepy and unsettling, a tense, toxic read that will wrong-foot you at every turn. All in Her Head was her debut and is absolutely brilliant. And take it away, Nikki.
Thanks very much, Victoria. So yes, I'm going to read from my second novel. It's called Look What You Made Me Do. It's a psychological thriller about the dark secrets that lie beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect family. And I'm going to read from the prologue, where Joe is married to a guy called Paul, and they've got 2 children, Livy and Grace. Livy is 8, and they have just discovered that she's gone missing. July 2018. Paul notices it first. I'm too busy darting from one room to another trying to find her, anxiety expanding in my chest like a balloon, making it hard to breathe. She isn't in the kitchen or the lounge, or behind the sofa in the snug, although with the various toys lying discarded on the floor and felt tip pens and colouring books littering every surface, I have to look twice to double check. I run upstairs 2 at a time, my heart pumping, and throw open her bedroom door. The room is empty. Dropping down on my hands and knees, I peer under her bed. Livy? My voice wavers and I clear my throat. There's no answer and nothing to see on the cream carpet apart from a thin layer of dust, the grey fluff forming thick circles around the bottom of each wooden leg, as if attracted by a magnet. I stand up and wince, biting my lip as a burning pain shoots through my toe. I've caught it on the edge of her chest of drawers. Cursing, I hobble into Grace's room, pulling open her white-painted wardrobe doors covered in half-torn Disney Frozen stickers that she's tried to peel off now she's outgrown them. The rows of clothes hang motionless, no pairs of small legs protruding underneath. Livy, it's Mummy, I shout into the silence, trying to ignore the throbbing in my foot. You need to come out if you're hiding. I promise I won't be cross. I listen intently, praying for the sound of a creaking floorboard, a muffled giggle, footsteps scuttling across the carpet. Nothing. Our bedroom is at the other end of the hall, where our duck-egg blue throw lies undisturbed on top of the duvet in exactly the same position I'd left it this morning. There's no sign of any obvious telltale lumps that I pretend not to spot during one of our games of hide and seek. Oh God, where is she? Our wardrobe is locked, the bathroom's empty. I wince as I swallow the metallic taste where I've bitten the inside of my cheek, running back down the stairs to the kitchen. She's not upstairs, I've searched everywhere, I say. Paul glances over my shoulder while I'm speaking, staring out through the patio doors across our lawn. He's not listening to me. I grab his arm to get his attention, wondering if he can feel the same ice-cold fingers that are squeezing my lungs, the same weight that has sunk to the bottom of my stomach like an anchor, preventing me from moving. What are you looking at? I ask, trying not to shout. We've already checked outside. I can't keep the edge of hysteria out of my voice as I pull on the sleeve of his shirt, urging him to do something, anything, to find her. He shakes my hand off roughly, pushing me aside as he twists the door handle and realises it's locked, his gaze still fixed on the bottom of the garden. What? What is it? I screw up my eyes against the brightness and blink away the tears that blur my vision. She's not out there, Paul. 2 swings dangle limply beneath a metal frame and the trampoline is empty, the canvas mat stretched tight, waiting expectantly for the next jumper. Get out of the way, he yells. I stagger backwards, shocked by his unexpected aggression. Are you blind, Joe? He jabs his finger repeatedly towards the end of the garden as he struggles to get the key off its hook on the wall and into the lock. I can't see what he's pointing at. There, he shouts, look! I can hear the panic in his voice as he fights to open the door. At first, all I can discern through the faint patterns of small handprints smeared on the pane of glass is his office at the end of the garden, the timber structure silhouetted against the evening sun. He finally manages to turn the key before I notice the faint haze around the bottom of the building that is spreading slowly across the grass. It drifts in swirls, and the smell hits me the moment Paul flings open the patio door. Smoke. Have you searched in there? He glances at me and I don't need to answer. He sprints across the lawn, screaming her name as I sink down onto the tiled floor, unable to move as I watch the flames appear. Their red and orange tongues are initially hesitant, contemplating the taste, but once they realise it's a meal to be savoured, they rise up and devour the whole building in a matter of minutes.
Oh, that's good, Nikki. I love it. Oh my goodness. That's fantastic, Nikki. Thank you so much. I love your books. I absolutely love them, and they're so real. And you know, for anybody who has kind of teenage kids kicking around the house, who just, oh my God, I know what they're doing. That was so fantastic. And for, you know, just so everybody else knows that I have met Nikki and Penny through the most amazing group of people who are the D20 authors. So we all debuted in 2020, which was not exactly the best time ever to debut as novelists. And the group has become, you know, I'm sure Nikki and Penny will agree, the most amazing tight group of people who we rely on to talk about ups and downs and all manner of crazy that happens in the publishing industry that we haven't ever experienced before. So thank you.